Welcome to another episode of the Pivoted Success Podcast, featuring Sean Cochran from TCC Canada and myself, Jared Goldsmith from ESAC's Virtual Events. We're very pleased today to be welcoming two of the leading membership team of the Ottawa Network for Education, Heather Norris and Albert Wong. Thank you so much for joining us, folks.
Thanks
for having us.
Thanks, Sean.
So let's talk a little bit about, we love having multiple people on stage from the same organization, so we could ask you both the same question. Let's talk a little bit about you, Heather. Talk a bit about who are you? What's your background about? We'll ask the same question to Albert, and then we'll ask what OMFI is all about.
Sure, absolutely. So I have quite a varied history working in diverse sectors from healthcare, so public, private, not-for-profit sector experience. I've been in the not-for-profit sector now for probably about 12 to 15 years, and really sort of entrenched in supporting these local community organizations that provide the necessary programs and services that our communities need to be vibrant and relevant. I wasn't someone who set out on my professional journey thinking or planning to work for registered charities or in the not-for-profit sector. But what I was able to do is build a lot of diverse skills and expertise along the way from working in the public and the private sector that I was then able to bring into and integrate into working with and supporting the not-for-profit sector, which is such an incredibly important sector in our communities. And also, I think, a really important part of the economic engine of our communities, because it is a large sector, employs a lot of people, provides a lot of programs and services. And like I said, the necessary programs and services that our communities need, from arts and culture, sports and recreation, education, a real gamut of the services that we need that people access, some people every day on a regular basis, but don't necessarily think or know that they're accessing a service that's provided through a registered charity or not-for-profit organization.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to hear you bring up the word community, because that really is at the heart of what all of us strive to be part of and engage with. So thank you very much, Heather. Albert, same question.
Yeah, similar to Heather, I've had sort of a variety of roles prior to arriving at ONFI. I've worked in the private sector and the public sector. I actually grew up in Ottawa, and I went to Nepean High School. And by trade, I became a chartered accountant. And so I was in accounting for about 10 years and tried different industries. And it just came back to nonprofit, which is what we're in right now. This is my favorite sector. It's a joy to be helping, working with the community, helping kids, achieve their dreams. And I get to meet amazing people like you guys out here just working in the community. So thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you, Albert. I mean, it's a very different feel from sitting behind a file working on a tax return, let's say, being an accountant, versus creating programs and activities that change people's lives and shaping the future of children. So it's a good lead-in, actually. So let's start with you, Albert. What is ONFI all about from your perspective? And then we'll hear from Heather.
Yeah. Okay. So, from my perspective, ONFI, we address so many needs of our community through our K-12 schools. I'll focus a little bit more on the junior achievement aspect, because I know Heather's got the whole purview of ONFI. But for junior achievement, for example, it's really about connecting our volunteers and experts in the community into the school system to help youth learn about business skills, financial literacy, different types of careers they could pursue. So it's really exposing students to career paths that they might never have considered before. I mean, when I was in high school, I could probably name you off 20 jobs, really. And I was supposed to choose my career out of that. So guess what? I picked one of those 20 jobs. But we know there's like tens of thousands of jobs and new occupations like coming up all the time. So really, to me, ONFI is, I think we're like, we're kind of a community connector, and we have like our special sauce is really connecting the community with the school system, right? Like we have a special place, and I don't think anyone does it like we can do it.
Yeah, and what is the Junior Achievement Program, Albert?
Yeah, so Junior Achievement, it's actually that's international, but it's also delivered across Canada. So in Ottawa, JA Ottawa, we deliver hands-on experiential programs where volunteers connect directly with the students and teach students practical, useful skills such as how to build a business plan, how to build a personal budget, how to save, how to invest, and then also talk about different types of career opportunities and educational paths. And we've been doing this with Onfi. Onfi's been doing JA for since 2012. But JA has been in Ottawa since the 80s. And JA also exists in Canada since 1955 through JA Canada.
Okay, it sounds like a program I wish they had when I was a student. Who knows where we would have been right now? Heather, let's talk about maybe the broader picture of what the Ottawa Network for Education is all about.
Absolutely. Of course, I'm likely a little bit biased because I think we're a bit of a diamond in the rough. And I really do appreciate the opportunity for you to have us today because we always like to share our information and what our organization does. So with Onfi, we fuel kids and ignite learning, making sure that all children in Ottawa have an equal start every school day. So we are a charitable organization and we collaborate with partners from education, business, government, and the community. We develop programs for kindergarten to grade 12 students. And we do that in partnership with the 4 public school boards. So our programs are within the school boards. We support children and youth in English and French. And no other community organization has the ability or reach that we have to provide these much needed programs across the region. So right now, we currently have 8 programs running within the schools. As Albert mentioned, Junior Achievement is one of our 8 programs run by our dedicated team of staff and volunteers. Now, as Albert mentioned, we address a number of diverse issues and challenges under 3 pillars. So health and well-being, learning, and career readiness programs. So within our work, as a registered charity, we need to fundraise all year, every year. So we raise about $1 million annually from the community. And in a traditional year, we recruit, train, and place over 3,000 volunteers to support the work that we do within the schools.
Let's talk about how you were both affected by COVID. Let's talk about the personal side first, and then we could talk about how the organization was affected. So Heather, let's start with you. If you wish to share some of your personal thoughts about dealing with COVID.
Absolutely. So I think, as we often hear, and I can certainly attest to in my own experience, is we are all riding this wave together, but I think we're all in a different boat and everybody's experience is a little bit different. So for myself, I live alone, so it's a little bit of an easier transition for me to be working remotely because I don't have to manage other sort of personal and family sort of responsibilities within my own home. So that piece, I can be sort of as efficient working from home as I can be at the office. But certainly, like everybody else, I miss the social interaction. I am a very social person, so I miss the events that I was going to, haven't been able to see family and gather in that way, but have certainly really endeavored to jump into and use technology to connect with my family virtually, to keep connected and check in and make sure that that everybody is doing okay.
Yeah, speaking of connections, my nephew had his bar mitzvah last week on Zoom, and it was I couldn't go there because they closed the borders. So it's
oh yeah, wow.
It's something. Albert, over to you. How were you and your family affected by COVID?
Yeah, similar to Heather, like I'm a pretty extroverted person, and I liked those events that we used to, get to see each other at, like the ESACs. So when when those events had to go online, I found that I was actually having more time at home with my wife. So that actually helped a little bit there to be able to focus inwards. I'm really active in playing tennis. So last summer was a pretty good tennis. We were able to play tennis and still social distance. But now with the 3rd lockdown, everything is closed. So that's, for me, I'm having more difficulty, I guess, staying in shape. So I'm just incorporating more daily walks where I can.
Yeah.
And in terms of working from home, when I was in the high tech sector, I worked from home for a couple of years. So it wasn't too much of a a change to go back to working from home.
So with the drastic change we sort of all experienced, no matter what sort of sector we were in or where we were, basically, I mean, we hear a lot about some of the hardest hit industries like travel and tourism and the retail sector and things like that. But I would imagine the not-for-profit area would be pretty bad as well in terms of the impact, because I can only imagine the amount of live events and other opportunities for you to do outreach, fundraising, and all that sort of stuff that kind of just disappeared overnight.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I can honestly say that we are one incredibly grateful organization and have had and received a really positive response during COVID. Unlike some of our other not-for-profit and charitable organizations in the community, particularly ones that focus on group-type membership events, so arts and culture, sports and recreation, those organizations obviously are having a tough time. I would say overall as an organization, we've had a successful year. It hasn't been easy, but our success in part has come from the ability of our staff to be nimble and agile and resilient in maneuvering our programs and maneuvering programs successfully that have then lent themselves to opportunities to be able to apply for COVID response emergency funding. Certainly our school breakfast program, as we headed into COVID response and started creating school breakfast replacement kits being delivered in the community, well, the need, food insecurity is growing. The need is great, but it also means that at the same time, we've experienced some significant support for food security and from all levels this past year. So from the provincial government, so from different levels of government, increased funding came in this year. And we actually witnessed an unprecedented increase in individual donors this past year. Donations coming in to support all of our programs, but in a large part for the breakfast program, and have brought in donors, new donors who weren't previously supporting, and from different areas, like a lot of support from the education community, teachers and parents and EAs and people looking to us to continue to support and engage with their students. So we have found ourselves in again, a unique and in a grateful position, because one of the challenges that we face is also one of our greatest opportunities, which is the fact that we are a unique organization that has 8 different programs. And the challenge that creates is it also means that we're fundraising all year, every year for 8 different programs and 8 different issues. But it also, in an environment like this, lend itself to the fact that we're not a single issue organization. And if you're a single issue organization right now, and if you happen to be one of those organizations that can't function or execute or maneuver, just in terms of what you're able to do in this environment, it's a lot more challenging. And we have all 8 of our programs have successfully maneuvered, not only to respond in the COVID environment in and out of schools, and most of them are piloting new needs identified by teachers and schools. So we've been very grateful that way. But I can also honestly say, we do experience and have significant COVID fatigue. Our entire team we're agile and resilient, but we're also tired. The maneuvering has been constant. The pace of change has been constant, and we're doing a phenomenal job at keeping up. But also look for that light at the end of the tunnel.
Well,
No kidding.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sean.
I was just going to say, no kidding with the fatigue and the intensity, especially with the sort of almost daily changes that we're sort of thrown into when you think you're over the worst of it, and then, a third wave. Oh no, what do you mean? You said 2 and we were done, but all those sorts of things. But for you, I mean, it's so great to hear that the community's been supportive and still you've seen even more from sort of independent donors and things like that, because it's nice to see people supporting everybody during these hard times, especially when you're able to. So if you could take us back to the beginning, sort of mid-March, you probably had a bunch of events planned out that you were going to be going to and all those sorts of things. Tell us how that transition was for you and how quickly you were able to sort of spin and rotate and figure out what to do.
Yeah, so one of the things that I also like to share, just as a reminder, is that prior to March 2020, when COVID hit, we had actually started that school year in September with unprecedented roving school strikes that had never happened before across all 4 school boards. So from September to March, we were already in this continuous mode of, okay, this school board is closed today, so we need to adjust our programs. So we were already acting nimbly and agile towards the school board and the teacher needs by the time March hit. I think, again, our breakfast program being our largest program and food security being so important, within 2 weeks of the extended school closure in March, we started executing school breakfast replacement kits with 50 local community partners, local food agencies and community houses to get kits out into the community. We knew that when the schools closed, that it wasn't a question of were we or weren't we going to offer a program. It's how are we going to get it out there and how quickly can we do that? And at the same time, all of our other programs moved very quickly to virtual and digital formats. So we were really able to sort of successfully continue supporting teachers and students with volunteers and doing it in a virtual way, continuing to successfully run the JA program with mentors virtually now who no longer have to drive or commute to get to supporting a program and finding some efficiencies, doing virtual coding. We have an indoor classroom garden tower program, and the towers couldn't run this year, but we just launched a windowsill garden program, and we mailed seed kits out to hundreds of teachers and students so that they could grow at home and then plant in their gardens this summer and continue growing. So we've really benefited from the creativity and the innovation amongst our staff team and their ability to really execute on keeping these programs relevant and responding to the need to meet students where they are. So we really are making the shift from working and meeting students just in the schools during class time to now needing to meet them where they are if they're at home or.
Well, in retrospect, having to go through the school closures because of the strike and then COVID, so you were somewhat already familiar with schools closed. Here's what we have to do now, let's say for the breakfast program or JA. So I guess in retrospect, it's probably good practice. But let's talk, Albert, how have you pivoted for success? Let's talk about your personal side now. You said you used to work from home when you were in the high-tech industry. Mm-hmm. What have you been doing differently this time around?
Yeah, actually, that is a great question. So having to be home more often, right? It's given me more time to focus on things that I've not been focusing on. So one of it is mindset and working on kind of like personal development. So now being at home, I focus more on starting the day out with a certain practice of gratitude and meditation to start the day, to make sure that I'm centered. Because we know that when we turn that computer on, there's just lots of things to do. And we're always, giving a lot of our energy and focus out, that it's important that we have to fill our tank every day. So I start that first thing in the morning. And I try to incorporate certain things like getting out and doing some walking around the neighborhood and getting some fresh air into the system. Because, if we don't do that, if we don't schedule the time, I've realized this, if I didn't schedule a time to go out for a walk, I'd basically be at my computer for like 8 to 10 hours a day. So that's some things I've been focusing on more is what can I do to look after my own health? And so, yeah.
How about you, Heather? Have you changed any of your mind frames to be able to work from home, like you're in front of your computer all day?
Absolutely. So I can, comfortably share what I'm sure so many people have experienced. So when I started working from home, I started off with my laptop at my kitchen island, and then very quickly started to get a sore back. So then I moved to my dining room table where I was for a couple months, because I don't know if you'll remember, back when COVID started, it was incredibly difficult to find and buy any office furniture. So I didn't have, in my life, I've moved quite a few times, and I have always had an office set up until I moved back to Ottawa a couple of years ago. And so it was the one time that I actually needed it and didn't have a full setup. So it was probably close to 6 months in before I actually got properly set up with a desk, with a chair, to set myself up more ergonomically. And what was happening is, particularly when I was set up at my dining room table early on, it's very, very difficult to disconnect from work, because if your computer is there and if you leave it on, you're always hearing it go off. So I started implementing for myself, shutting down at the end of the day, but particularly on Fridays, I'd load my laptop and all my books into a little basket, and I'd put it in the closet for the weekend so that I could find space away from work. Now that I've been able to set up a separate office space that I can, shut down and move to a different room at the end of the day, that's helped. I also, I'm a runner. I run outside all year. So the good thing is that COVID or no COVID, I've still been able to sort of maintain. It's really important for me, for my own sort of mental health and wellness, to be able to continue to get that exercise. Also important for me to be checking in with others. So, my mom lives alone, so I FaceTime with her every single night, and I check in and say, hey, how you doing? How did your day go? And I find throughout my days and weeks, I check in with different friends. I check in with different colleagues and coworkers, just randomly, just to check in and say, hey, how are you doing? How are you and your family? So that's just all part of, trying to also, it supports, my well-being.
Well, just to be able to disconnect, I think that's such a valuable aspect, because I think most of the mental health that people are realizing is we're working so much more than we ever have been. No traffic. You don't have to find a parking spot or leave early or late. You just back-to-back meetings, so much more productive that we didn't realize it was happening to us. And to be able to physically unplug and throw your stuff in the closet, and then, or maybe not throw it, but drop it, leave it in the closet, and then come back in a few days, that is a real good suggestion. That's a really nice idea, Heather, to disconnect.
I think too, one of the other things that changed, I know for me, and a lot of changes for our staff, is also being mindful. We've done a lot of work this year in supporting and building our internal culture of wellness and supporting our employees and our team. Certainly, we've got a whole myriad of complexities with people working at home, right? We've got, people who are looking after and caring for. We have people who live with, or people who are essential frontline workers. Mm-hmm. We have employees who have kids at home of all ages. And we have a number of our staff, probably a third of our staff right now, who have public school age children at home, where they're doing the trifecta of working, parenting, and teaching during the day. And for me, how that transpires is we offer and want that flexibility for our staff to be able to plan their schedule in a way that works for them, to help them manage that home and the personal and the professional balance. But what that means is I sometimes have weeks where some staff come online really early in the morning because they want to get a couple hours in before their kids are up and active. Then they might be on late in the evening after their kids are going to bed. And that's great, because we're providing some flexibility, and it's really important now more than ever, I think, to be able to do that. But it also means that I'm receiving emails and a workload that can run from 4 or 5 in the morning till 10 or 11 at night. So in my role, I also had to be very mindful and very strategic, because I recognize that while they have to work some off hours, I also need to be responsive to some of their needs that come up that are important during that time. But at the same time, managing it in a way that makes sense and doesn't have me sort of burning the candle at both ends all day, every day, when everybody's working such varied schedules.
Well, Heather, thank you for sharing how you have helped others to adapt for your staff. Albert, let's ask the question for you. And as it relates to, say, some of the other JA mentors or even the students, how have you helped them to adapt to COVID?
Absolutely. I think so. Prior to COVID, our traditional JA program model has always been volunteers in the classrooms with the students. So having that, face-to-face time, the personal relationships, it's hard to match that. So when the schools were closed, we didn't want the students to miss out on those continued opportunities. And we heard from our volunteers themselves saying, we love to volunteer and we actually miss doing that, but we just can't leave right now. So what JA did is our maneuvering was something that we've been doing across JA Canada, is that we were moving our programs to virtual. So that basically encompasses having volunteers, for instance, Google Meet, right into the classrooms with the students and taking them through online activities with the students, or also sharing their own career paths and their own stories. So the way we've been able to help others is really just to make that connection again, because that's something that is, you just can't, it's hard to describe how powerful that is. Like, Jared, you know this yourself, and Sean too. Sean, you were a student in the JA Company program. When you have mentors helping the next generation, right? That's inspiring. It's inspiring for the mentors to be able to give back. And so many volunteers will say they get so much more out of volunteering. And then the students, students have told me the reason they've changed what they're studying in school, or have chosen to create a business, is because their experience in the JA program. So we never wanted to lose those opportunities for the students. So really just finding that way to connect them virtually is the way we've helped others.
It probably helps too, I imagine, at least with the sort of generation of children we have now, is they're also well versed when it comes to technology. So they can probably do circles around most of us when it comes to the ins and outs of a lot of these technologies. So have you found the sort of uptick from the students especially has been pretty good, considering it was a complete shift from before?
Well, partly yes and partly no. The technology is not an issue with the students. But given the challenges of being in school and then out of school again and then learning from home, it's a super long day for the students. And it's very discouraging for students not to be able to see their friends. So they're struggling like we are, but only they're teenagers and younger. So you can only imagine the additional types of struggles that they're facing. So, many teachers tell us like this, they don't know what their students actually look like because their videos are off. So if they were to see them in the store, they wouldn't recognize their students. So there's a level of disengagement from students we're seeing for sure. And there's lots of challenges just within the family units themselves. So when we see a program like JA Company, where we had this pitch it event through ESAC's virtual events, pitch their virtual businesses to the audience and judges, you can see the excitement that the students had and how proud they were of the businesses that they created. And this is a program that they can do regardless if the schools are open or closed. So that's very rewarding, just to be able to continue to do the work that OnFi does, is that we can't lose connection with our community, regardless if the schools are open or closed.
Yeah, it's that connectivity that people are going to realize helped us all get through it in whatever way, shape, or form. Heather, let's ask, what are you most excited about?
That's a great question. I think, like everybody, I'm excited to get to the end of the road with this pandemic and get a sense of what our new normal is going to look like. I think that's exciting. I think we have a lot of opportunity right now. One of the things that we haven't been able to do, just because we've been so entrenched in a continuous heavy workload, is we have not yet had the time. And given we're still in the pandemic, we haven't had the time yet to reflect and look back at all that's been accomplished, all that's changed, how and what and why things change, what we want to keep that change going forward. And I think it's really interesting in this environment because outside of COVID, not everybody likes change. And generally, if you talk to people, there's a lot of people who would prefer, who prefer things status quo. And what we've seen this year, and particularly, I mean, I can speak for Onfi, is our team who has been so resilient and agile, and even for those who might not think they like change, they really have done an exceptional job adapting and moving and maneuvering in this environment. So we've sort of been thrust into change management, at a very hurried pace. And I don't think we've had time yet to reflect on how well people have actually managed through this and so successfully. I'm also excited because I think what this environment allows us to do is make some pivots and changes that maybe we couldn't before or didn't want to. And now we actually have an opportunity organically to let some stuff go and transition some things. And a year or two from now, maybe nobody's going to notice that we let that piece go or that we maneuvered. So I actually think it's an exciting time. I know within Onfi we have a lot of creativity and innovation and real empathy for the work that we do. So we're actually working on some vivid visioning for our organization's future. So I don't know what that will look like, but I think it's a really exciting time for us to be brainstorming about the what could be, given what we've experienced this last year.
Do you think most people are looking forward to working from home once everybody gets the vaccine and we are allowed to associate it again?
That's a great question. So we've done a few staff surveys throughout COVID. And I mean, as you can imagine, I think we're going to be heading back to some version of a hybrid model of work. So we know that, and similar to my last comment about not everyone liking change, if I talked to Onfi colleagues a year and a half ago and asked what they thought about working remotely, there were a lot of people who were adverse, like, no, I'm coming into the office. I can't, I have to be in the office. I can't work at home. Well, all of a sudden, that changed, 360 degrees. And people have become very comfortable and very efficient working remotely. However, I do think that people really do miss the social and the networking aspect that comes with being in the office. And I think that's really important. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have going forward is how do we build and keep and retain the Onfi culture that we had when we were a social group of 25 people working in an office to now having this hybrid model or this remote work. That's a piece that I think for us we'll continue to have to work on. We're an organization that does really great potlucks. And let me tell you, and I also like to eat. So we're missing some of those real, social aspects. And so I think there is a willingness to want to get back. But I can tell you that from our staff surveys, there isn't anybody so far who said, I want to be back in the office 5 days a week.
Well, once you decide to have a potluck virtually by having people drop off different items at different homes, maybe you deliver to Orleans. That's where I live. Albert, what are you most excited about?
Wow, I'm excited about seeing you guys like face to face without a screen in front of me. Personally, I'm missing the team at Onfi. Like Heather says, we have an incredible group of individuals. The potlucks are amazing. I can say that for sure. Miss eating lunch with my teammates. I miss being out on the tennis court. I'll say it again. I mean, there's so many tennis videos I've watched. There's so many things I can do now in my mind, but I really actually have to be on the courts to try it out.
Hey, you sent a note, potluck hero. That's a good hashtag. I like that one.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, I miss being in, I was telling Heather this, I miss seeing the kids in the schools and seeing them like behind the scenes running their businesses and going through the challenges. How are we going to market this product, right? And hearing something, the mentor just kind of plants a seed for the students. I'm like, that's very clever. Yeah. So it's going to be nice just to see people again and just be in there. But we do know there'll probably be a hybrid model that continues for JA as well, just because we're able to reach like the far regions of Ottawa too, and include students from West Carleton, where it might have been very difficult for some volunteers to drive out there.
Yeah, actually,
That's one of the big things I love about all of this is it's forced everybody into change because like you said before, we're very resistant to change as people, but we're actually amazing at it when it comes down to it. If you had to do it, well, we can do it, but we just don't want to because it's a pain, right? So I think it's forced a lot of people to see that sort of remote work, remote life, all this stuff is possible, but we still do long for that social interaction because we are social animals. I mean, it is something that really is intrinsic among people, but especially with students. And I mean, I always feel worse for the kids because this is so impactful for them. Because to us, I mean, once you get into your 30s, 40s, 50s, another year, oh, that's just a year. But I mean, in your teens and stuff, a year is pretty drastic. And now we're moving into year 2. So my hope is, like you said, Albert, is just some more inclusivity on the outside of this so that we can incorporate people that may not have the ability to travel or the funds to be able to make it out, but still want to be able to participate and can do remotely. So I think it's very exciting for what we can accomplish later once we have the opportunity to choose what we do rather than be sort of forced upon us, right?
Speaking of choice, let's talk about putting your future hat on about the organization's future. Heather, let's look maybe a year down the road from now.
So a year down the road, I think and expect that we're still going to be very much, as Albert mentioned, in this hybrid model of having mentors and volunteers, both supporting our programs virtually and hopefully in class. I think what's been a really unique experience this year as well is the fact that not only have we maneuvered our programs in this environment, but almost every program this year has also piloted something new within their program based on new needs. So it's been a critical year for us to be responsive to the needs of the students and teachers. And so what I think we're going to see a year from now is that a pilot that we started, with one school board is going to have interest from the other school boards. And I think that we're going to see sort of that expansion continue, hopefully on the success of these pilots. I think that what we're also seeing is that the needs continue to grow. And so while we're able to offer virtual support, again, it allows us to meet students where they are and not just if they're sitting in a classroom with their teacher in class. So I think you're going to see us looking for opportunities and partnerships and really looking to meet the students and youth where they are. To continue to provide, the necessary supports for their student well-being and student success.
Mm-hmm. Albert, what about the JA program in a year from now? How do you envision that to look like?
Yeah, actually, because we've tried many different things, I would say that we're going to see the JA Pitch It to Win It event come back in the second year for sure. We're going to see the programs that are the most in need and to continue on. So we're going to learn what's worked. We're always gathering feedback from our teachers and students and mentors to see what we can improve. Mm-hmm. And the programs that just aren't receiving the pickup for whatever challenges we're seeing, we're not going to be able to put as much time into that because all of our resources are so stretched right now. You really have to focus in on where you get the biggest impact and the best pickup. So it's been a year of testing things. As Heather said, we're all piloting really new initiatives and we're learning some really cool things out of it. So I'd say JA, we're going to be strong, but we might have a different menu of programs than volunteers are used to seeing.
Right. What about some words of wisdom for people who are listening or watching today? Albert, let's bring that over to you.
I think back to actually the words of wisdom that the 7 entrepreneurial judges had for the students. And I think it applies to many of us. Don't be afraid to try new things. And if it doesn't work out the first time, right, just see what you can learn from that experience and don't give up so readily. Talk to people, ask people questions, get feedback from your customers, your volunteers. People are really willing to have a virtual coffee with you, right? You just ask them for some time, as well as make sure you do your research and understand your finances well. aside from that, it's just just continue to try things, and don't be afraid of failure. We got to embrace that failure, because that change that you can really learn from that and apply it to the future.
Absolutely.
Well, I love that you say that, Albert, too, because I find as entrepreneurs and things like that, everybody looks at failure as proper failure. Whereas if you're a hockey player or something like that, every time you miss the net, that's probably practice to get better, to get more accurate, to get wherever, which is really, as an entrepreneur, what failing is. And you have to get over that mindset that, oh, well, my life's over because I failed at this. And I don't think there's anything in life within reason that you can't sort of move on from once you've gotten over that mistake or that error or whatever it is, and learn from it and grow from it, right?
Mm-hmm. And so often you hear from entrepreneurs who made it big. They sold the Shopifys, they did this, that, but you don't hear about the 5 times they went bankrupt and the 10 businesses that folded. It's all those experiences that enabled them to be successful in the future. And that's a great point, like Sean and Albert. The failures, well, are they failures? They're learning experiences. We have to get rid of that stigma. How about you, Heather? What about some words of wisdom for those watching?
Yeah, I think further to what Albert said too, I think we've talked about a lot of good reasons for people moving forward not to be afraid of change, and maybe even instead of that word change, to think of it and look at it as opportunity. And when we embrace opportunity, still some things work more successfully than others, but they're all learning opportunities. I think the other thing that I mentioned earlier around, finding a way or a system that works for you to be able to shut down your technology and close your work at the end of the day. I've also been someone who's always strongly believed, and I do not sleep with my cell phone. And I'm a very good sleeper and get lots of rest. So I highly encourage people not to have their cell phone beside them. I think it's really important for people to be able to give their mind a rest and not hear their phone dinging at all hours of the day and night. And I think one thing that I've learned, particularly during the pandemic, is how important it is for everybody to stay connected. And staying connected looks different for everyone, but you need and should find somebody in your network, whether it's a family member, a friend, or a colleague, but somebody that you can just connect with on a regular basis and just, chat about all the good, chat about all the bad, but somebody that you can just, communication and staying connected to somebody else, I think is really key right now too, and really important.
Sure. I would like to share something that Albert posted in the general chat, is that the acronym for FAIL, first attempt in learning. That's brilliant. Mm-hmm. Very, very well done, Albert. So we're coming to near the end of our segment today, but what can the community do to help for the Ottawa Network for Education? Heather?
We are always looking for support and raising the awareness of our programs, of the ONTFI name, of all the great work and that we're doing with the children and youth, and in partnership with the school boards. I mentioned earlier, we fundraise all year, every year. And I can also say that in maneuvering our programs and running a breakfast program for remote students and in class is very expensive, and the needs are great. So we are always welcome to donations and people who want to support our organization or one of our programs, and volunteers and mentors. So if you think about the school environment, almost anything you could think of, we could find a volunteer opportunity. If somebody has an expertise in math or science, or plays musical instruments, wants to support English as a second language learners, there's all kinds of opportunities available. So chances are, if you're looking to volunteer, we can probably find a great fit.
Well, actually, I'm not sure if I'm getting back to playing saxophone. I've been playing for 35 years, but because of COVID, Okay, that's a little off topic right now. But Albert, what about you? What can the community do to help the Junior Achievement Program?
Yeah, it's very much just along the same lines. Heather summed it up very, very well. It's to spread the word about JA and ONTFI. We need we need donors and funders, investors and sponsors to support the program, so we can continue to run these programs in the community. In terms of mentors and volunteers, there's always a place for people to give back what they know to the next generation. How those programs look are evolving right now. So certainly reach out to our organization.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've always been such a huge supporter and fan of Onfi and JA in particular. And even Sean, like we mentioned earlier, went through the JA program when he was younger.
Yeah, not just once, but I think 3 times. So we did the lead up and then the JA company program. We did the international exchange one, I think was the last one I got to do, which was very exciting. We didn't go anywhere, but we just teamed up with another group from another country. But that was very eye-opening for us because it was like, well, what can we export to them and import from them? So it was a very exciting program, especially for high school, where I found a lot of the time it was hard to sort of really engage with something that was interesting in the sort of schooling a lot of the time. So it really sort of touched. And look at me now. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. So I mean, I think it must have paved the way for that, I would say.
Yes, we'll take full credit, Sean. JA.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I should say congratulations to you, Sean. Congratulations on being nominated for 40 Under 40 this year.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations. Fabulous news. It's all from JA, obviously.
Exactly. Really the start. So kids out there listening to this, JA is the way to go.
Is there anything else either of you would like to add as we're wrapping up now?
I would just add that please visit our website, check out Onfi. If you do have any questions, please touch base with us. We are always here and available. We are always looking to connect with new partners in the community. So please check us out and touch base.
Well, thank you, Heather. And what is the website and what is the link that somebody could reach out and get in touch with you?
It's Onfi, ONFE-rope, ROPE.ca.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Sean, was any last minute closing?
No, that's great. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. We really appreciate it. It's such a nice sort of change from some of the other people we've had a chance to talk to, because I mean, it's very business focused, and this has been very kid focused, which I think is an area that everybody feels has been, I mean, a really hard time for people during this time, whether it's being stuck at home, not getting to see their friends, or just the general sort of turmoil that is our world right now. So I think it's amazing that there's programs like yours that exist. And I think it's incredibly important, like you mentioned, Heather, that the sort of fabric of society. So, I mean, it's really important that we look after these organizations and try and help any way that we can.
Absolutely. We're all working together to build our next generation of entrepreneurs, philanthropists, teachers. So it takes, as you mentioned earlier, Jared, the village to help raise the village and the community to raise a child. So it's all the work that we do together with all of our collaborative partners and stakeholders and funders that make what we do possible. So we're one grateful organization.
Fantastic. Keep up the great work. So thank you so much. Today we were joined by Heather Norris and Albert Wong from the Ottawa Network for Education on the Pivoted Success podcast, hosted by Sean Cochran from TCC Canada and myself, Jared Goldsmith from ESAC's Virtual Events. Stay safe, everybody. Thank you so much.